Back again with another fresh cut. You are now tuned into the underground. My name is Mbaya. I go by the doctor. If you are not subscribed yet, I don't know what you're waiting for, but subscribe to the channel now. I will be demonstrating part 1 of one way of how to go about this haircut. Mainly because of my guy's lineup. He has very low density in the front, as you can see. He has very light hair that grows in, which is visible, but do you keep it? That's the big question. So this one way that I'm going to show in this video is how to traditionally go about cutting pretty much any haircut. And this is a tapered fade. So just make sure you comb out everything that you will be cutting, prep everything. When prepping the haircut, I usually avoid using a brush because you're not able to locate the imperfections and the flaws in the hair, such as cowlicks, scars, moles, you name it. The brush is really good for laying down the hair, but you don't want to use that during the prep. So keep a comb handy when you start to cut the hair lower and have it to a level where it's brush length. Go for it. At the end of the day, what you use is preference. Getting right into this haircut, you start off with your clipper lever all the way open and go up pretty high. Stay right underneath that ridge, no higher. Make sure everything's evened out all the way, and remember, keep that lever open. So just a real quick pro tip, here is one thing you should always remember. When creating your guidelines, work your way up, keep the lever open at all times. Next, you follow up with your number 1 guard with the lever all the way open. Start to work your way into that hair at the top. Don't go into it too much. Remember, just stay right underneath where the long hair separates from the shorter hair. Don't go any higher. Stay right underneath that ridge area. Staying consistent with the lever all the way open, switch guards and move on to your number 1.5 and start to remove some of that bulk, lightening up the transition from the longer hair into the short, making sure that everything flows. It's all about the flow of the hair. When you're blending up, follow through with the way the hair grows. Comb it in the direction that it grows. Do not cheat yourself by making any shortcuts. Make sure you're cutting in the direction that the hair grows. Next, you switch over to your number 2 and keep that lever open. Start to remove a little bit more of that weight that you're seeing. As you go into the hair further, you want to switch guards into a bigger number. So a number 3 could be necessary depending on how the number 2 performs, but all hair reacts different to the blade or the guard number that you have, especially when it comes to the guard system brand. Sometimes this all comes down to the style of motor you're using, whether it's a rotary, pivot, or just a magnetic. Now that all the guidelines are nice and prepped, ready to go, you start blending. So you grab your number 1 guard, you close the lever halfway. Then you start to remove a little bit of that weight, which technically is an invisible guideline. It's there, you can't visually see it, but when it comes to making your transition smooth, you have to make sure you remove that. Next, you close your clipper lever all the way and start to work your way down, making sure that you're creating that transition flowing smoothly. Do not rush any of these steps. This is how you achieve blurry blends. So make sure you follow through every step. So to finish up the blend, I'm going to use my 0.5 Then I will follow through by using no guard with that same technique, keeping it consistent, opening all the way, closing halfway, then closing all the way to make sure that I complete the blend. I'm going to go ahead and cut out some of this right side footage. I will save that for the part 2 video, which will make more sense when it comes to the way that I will go about doing the lineup. And just in case you're wondering why I want to save this part for the other video, is because of the flow that the hair on the right side grows in is completely different from the left. Before I complete this blend, the next step is the lineup. So before I get to that, I wanted to mention that as the barber, don't just make things up. Listen to your client. Then as a professional, go about the next thing you do accordingly. Listen to your client, okay? What they want is what you should do, and recommend what's best if necessary. If they don't listen, do whatever you have to do to make them happy. That means do what they want. Now that the entire blend from the left to the right, the back as well, is completed, you go ahead and start with your line prep. Now, one thing I don't really use, because I'm not really a huge fan of it, is holding sprays. I don't really recommend them, but they do have a purpose. In this case, they will be perfect for what I have to work with. But this is a teaching moment, a very teachable moment, which I want to really explain why I feel that cutting this style of haircut on somebody that doesn't have a very prominent lineup. I mean, he has a great lineup. Don't get me wrong. It's not like he's thinning away or having his corners recede or something like that. He just has very light hair. So this is one of those lineups where you can decide whether to keep the small little baby hairs, which are barely there, or you can just cut them away. Most barbers nowadays are big on keeping every single little piece of hair, only to end up using fake hair, as in fibers, airbrush, or some sort of Beijing or whatever just for men that does the job. I'm not against any of that, not to demonize it, but there is professional pushbacks which can be done well and have them look presentable. Yes, it's gonna suck when it grows back, but that's why you come right back in and get your haircut, because in the first place, getting a haircut is manipulating the hair that doesn't grow, in the sense that most people feel that, oh, you're pushing me back. Well, the lineup in general is a pushback. Now, I'm not advocating for pushing back. All I'm saying is you have to properly overcompensate for where the person, has a little bit of flaws. You have to overcorrect a bit. That's all I'm saying. Starting my lineup off in the middle, working my way out to the vertical bars. This is exactly what I'm talking about right here. I'm going to zoom in on that a bit. Now, we can keep it right here. But with my client, which is really a preference, he likes to have his lineup very sharp and crispy. So we can keep it right here. But what we're actually going to do is knock it back just a little bit more, because this is just not that strong. I can throw fibers over this all day, cool. but he's back often anyway. He stays in the shop consistently. So what I'm going to do is get rid of all the hair that has very low density and get it right to where it's more sharp and appears to be more prominent, making sure not to go past the eyebrow. That's where you keep it safe. Don't go past the eyebrow. Also, like I said before, I am not advocating for pushing back. This is a client preference. So I'm gonna move on to the other side. It grows completely different on this side. The other side, on the left side, or his left, is very full compared to what the right side grows like. It's a lot shorter as far as his vertical bar on this side, but as you can see, there's a bunch of hair that's just not very prominent. We can try to grow this out for weeks, months. It will just never really be as strong as most people think. Trust me, we have tried this. Now, the one type of client that will complain about you cutting this extra hair away is a waiver, which I completely respect because I honor the fact that they don't want that cut. And if it's a lady or a female, don't even get me started on that. Whew. And then the other type of client that will do this is the one that wears crop top style, has the whole fringe hair coming down on the forehead, you know what I'm saying? The whole bang thing, or, you know, a comb over type of guy. They are the ones that complain if you knock this extra hair back. That's when you can just keep it very natural, let it be, and probably just get their vertical bar and their C cut. But anyway, this is a to each their own moment. But I have everything prepped as far as the front lineup and the vertical bar. I'm gonna move on to his sideburns, which are barely there, but he likes them, so we keep them. And this is one of those clients that will never move on to like a blowout taper or a low taper in a sense. He won't ever do even a high taper. That can save him a whole lot with the growth part. The most logical thing to do for him though is to do a drop fade. Maybe just fade him all the way out to the skin, blend it, and keep his vertical bars and keep the shadow style C cups, and he can have a nice full lineup, but he just won't go for it. It's not happening. Now, what I must mention is when you're lining up, you have to use the corners of your blade. You can have it flat on the skin, that works out just fine, but all blades won't catch every piece of hair. This is why I mentioned I have a part 2 with a different technique of how to go about this type of hair lineup, which most of this hair you will miss when you go about it with this more orthodox, traditional way of cutting hair by fading first, then you do the lineup. But the way I usually recommend this type of hair texture with very light, thin hair, you have to line it up first, then you fade last. But that will be the part 2. I will be posting that really soon for those of you who are interested in seeing how that goes. But this haircut is a wrap. All we need to do is do the finishing touch-ups, clean up everything around the neck, the tapers, make sure everything is blended. If you made it this far into the video, please leave a comment, share this video, and do not forget to subscribe to the channel. Follow me on my IG, TikTok as well, and you can find me on Facebook. Now that everything is completed, this is the full look. What I have to do now is just apply a little bit of water up top, keeping it very natural. And I'm going to use a twist up comb. I prefer the twist up comb because it's easier to clean versus the sponge. It gets a little bit messy. I don't want to keep on passing hair around from client to client. I mean, just imagine, like, I remember one time, right? I was using the sponge on a gray hair client. And the next person that I had was a young guy that didn't have gray hair. And a little bit of that gray hair was still stuck in the sponge, regardless to me trying to do a cleanup on it or whatever. My attempt was a failure. And I started sponging the hair, and this gray hair just started to fly all over the place. And the kids freaking out like, yo, do I have gray hair up top? I kind of just ignored them all the way. Then I came clean about it. I was like, hey, look, I didn't clean it well. It was left over from my guy. But really, that was like a very embarrassing moment for me, speaking for myself. I really did attempt to try to clean up, but it just didn't work out. And I'm a horrible liar, so me attempting to lie was a disaster. I just had to come clean. I told him the truth. So ever since then, no sponge for me. The fact that nothing can ever be 100% clean, I put in extra effort when it comes to cleaning up to make sure that I have double, triple, everything. When it comes to keeping things clean, I go over and beyond for my clients because I want them to be treated the same way I would love to be treated if I was getting a service. So treat everybody equal. Don't shortcut anything when it comes to the cleaning process. Stay clean, y'all. Part 2 coming soon.